Ruthie Mae McCoy was petrified, riding back home in the van that takes outpatients from the psychiatric center at Mount Sinai Hospital. She suddenly blurted out to the woman sitting next to her, "Someone has threatened my life." The woman advised McCoy to tell staff members at the clinic, yet McCoy said that she didn't want to get anyone else involved. This is the story of how one woman's tragic death became the plot point of a very popular horror film. McCoy was born in Hughes, Arkansas, and moved to Chicago as a child for a better life. She attended Phillips High School for a little over a year. Signs of mental illness began in her 20s. She would talk to herself and was prone to bouts of unexpected anger. Yet her exact diagnosis was unknown to family members, though later it was determined to be schizophrenia. She worked for short periods of time, but due to her mental illness, she wouldn't keep the jobs for long. She was on government assistance for most of her life. McCoy originally lived in the Dearborn Homes. When her Humboldt Park apartment flooded, she applied for emergency housing and asked to be placed in Whitworth Gardens with family members. She asked also not to be placed in the high rises. Yet the CHA offered her an apartment on the 11th floor in the Abbott Homes. She moved in May of 1983 into apartment 1109. She lived in one of the 7 15-story Y-shaped towers at the Grace Abbott Homes in the ABLA. These were the most dangerous buildings in the ABLA. McCoy lived at the end of the corridor on the 11th floor of the building at 1440 West 13th Street. At approximately 8:45 p.m. on April 22, 1987, McCoy called the police and she told the police as follows: "I am a resident at 1440 West 13th Street, and some people next door are totally tearing this down, you know." The dispatcher responded, "What are they doing, ma'am?" Her response is unintelligible on tape, but the dispatcher understood her gist to mean that someone was trying to break in. McCoy responded, "Yeah, they throwed the cabinet down." The dispatcher responded, "From where?" McCoy continued, "I'm in the projects. I'm on the other side. You can reach in my bathroom. They want to come through the bathroom." The dispatcher responded, "All right, ma'am, what's your address?" Even though McCoy had already given the address. McCoy gave the address again and stated that the elevator was working, to which the dispatcher responded, "I'm sending the police now." By 9:02, the police hadn't yet arrived, partially because the dispatcher reported it as a disturbance between neighbors and not a break-in. Another neighbor called and said that she heard gunshots in McCoy's apartment, and yet another neighbor called at 9:04 to report gunshots and hollering from apartment 1109, which was McCoy's apartment. 2 more police cars were headed to the scene from the 12th district. 4 officers arrived at McCoy's apartment at about 9:10 p.m. They knocked, but no one answered. The officers had called dispatch to have dispatch call McCoy back, yet the phone just rang. 2 more officers drove to get the key to unlock McCoy's apartment, yet when they returned, the key didn't fit McCoy's lock. After not gaining entry, the police left, even though they believed she was in danger. The next day, McCoy's neighbor, Deborah Lastly, called the police stating that she hadn't seen McCoy that day and she saw the police at McCoy's door the night before. Several police and CHA security showed up to McCoy's door. As they discussed whether or not to break down the door, McCoy's neighbors say the security guards talked the police out of it, stating that the tenant could sue if the police broke the door. And they also stated that the police would have to secure the door once it was broken down. So once again, the police officers left. The next day, Lastly called the housing complex with her concerns. The CHA sent out a CHA official and a carpenter to McCoy's door, who finally drilled through the lock and opened the door. McCoy was found laying in the bedroom on her side in a pool of blood. She had one shoe on and one shoe off and her hand over her chest. Her house was in disarray. She had been shot 4 times and her cause of death was internal bleeding. Finally, 2 days later, she was pronounced dead on April 24th, 1987 at 4:35 p.m. This was the second time McCoy's house had been burglarized through the bathroom medicine cabinet, according to McCoy's daughter. Although McCoy reported the break-in, CHA never resecured the bathroom medicine cabinet. CHA claims that there was never any report of a break-in at McCoy's residence. McCoy's murder, or the murder of a mentally ill CHA resident, only warranted coverage by the Chicago Defender, the city's black-owned newspaper. Not until June 10, 1987, did the Tribune report the story because of the newsworthy fact that the killers had come through the medicine cabinet. Had come through the medicine cabinet from the adjacent apartment 1108. The Tribune asked the pertinent question, why didn't police enter the apartment on the first night? Tenants had been complaining of the bathroom break-ins for at least a year before McCoy's death. The pipe chase was there to provide easy access to plumbing through apartments. The 2 defendants in the McCoy case were charged with murder, home invasion, armed robbery, armed violence, and residential burglary. The home invasion charge indicates that the state believes the killers knew McCoy was home when they broke in. Police believe the killers wanted McCoy there so she could tell them where she had the money stashed. The phone was one of at least 3 items stolen from McCoy's apartment. Detectives don't know whether money was also stolen, but only change was found in the apartment. Police recovered a television and a rocking chair that belonged to McCoy in the home of one of the defendant's friends. The phone has not been found. The fact that the phone was taken is intriguing. Remember, the dispatcher called her number the night that she was shot, and police officers outside her door heard the phone ringing. So the phone had to be stolen after the police left that night. It also means that the killers may have still been on the 11th floor when police arrived, hiding out in the apartment or in another apartment adjacent to McCoy's. The 2 men arrested by police in the McCoy murder were both residents of the ABLA. Edward Turner, 19, was arrested in his row house apartment a few days after the killing. Unemployed, Turner had no convictions but had been out on bond on a charge of unlawful use of a weapon. On June 9th, police caught up with the other suspect, 25-year-old John Honduras. After getting a tip, he was in a ninth floor apartment of the Abbott High Rise, a block from the one McCoy lived in. Officers found him hiding under a bed. Also unemployed, Honduras had previous convictions for robbery and for possession of a stolen vehicle. The main witness was Tim Brown, who made a statement the day after McCoy's body was found. He and another man had been hanging out in apartment 1108 for most of the day in question. They were later joined by Ronald Coleman, Honduras, and Turner. Coleman showed Honduras how the adjacent apartment, 1109, which was McCoy's apartment, could be entered through the medicine cabinet. Coleman and another gentleman left, and after that it was just Brown, Honduras, and Turner inside of apartment 1108. Brown witnessed Honduras and Turner break into apartment 1109 through the medicine cabinet and heard several gunshots. Turner emerged holding a TV and Honduras had a rocking chair, and then they disappeared. They allegedly returned 2 to 3 hours later to retrieve shell casings and allegedly entered apartment 1109 through the main door, having purposely left it unlocked earlier. The TV and the rocking chair were later recovered by authorities and identified as belonging to McCoy. Both of McCoy's killers were later found not guilty. Ruthie McCoy's case is a chilling example of systemic neglect, the stigma surrounding individuals with mental health issues, unsafe housing, and just overall institutional failure. Her voice wasn't believed, and her death became a cautionary tale about what happens when marginalized people are ignored. The film Candyman was based on the Ruthie McCoy murder, and other than some characters in the first and second film having the last name McCoy, there is no mention of Ruthie McCoy at all in the film, no tribute. There is no mention of the real case. There were no residuals paid to the family. No mention of her at all. Ruthie McCoy was not only mistreated in her life, she was also exploited in her death.